Mhm.
So we'll just edit this little piece out. I'm going to open the webinar. I'll do an introduction of Stacy and Julie, and then they're going to go disappear to the back. So get ready to say hi to everybody. Let's get this thing started. On our marks, get set.
Great.
The people are coming. The people are coming. And welcome to our attendees. We're just going to take a moment here to let everybody populate. We've got a big crowd expected tonight with over 195 participants signed up. So give us a minute and we will get this show started. Thank you all for joining us. It's been a while since I've seen you all in webinar mode. So it's great to see everybody. And we'll get this started in just another minute. Okay, 49:50, here we go. So welcome everybody. First, some quick introductions from the HCMA. I want to thank Stacy Titus Brown and Julie Russo for helping us behind the scenes here tonight. So they're going to wave hello and then they're going to go to the backstage. And if you have any technical questions, you can use the chat feature to ask any technical questions of Stacy and Julie. And then if you have any questions for our panelists, you can use the Q&A box located at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So just make sure you see that. We are not going to be taking any live questions, so you don't need to do the hand raise. You're just going to use the Q&A box. And we will answer those questions live at the end of the presentation. So I am going to get started with my screen share here. And my apologies if I slur any speech, had some dental work done today, and I'm still having a little bit of a problem working with this new stuff in my mouth. So welcome to this special edition webinar. We are going to be speaking about a clinical trial for those with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy called SONATA HCM. And the sponsor of this trial is a company called Lexicon. It's a new name to the HCM community, so you'll get to know them tonight a little bit through their presentation. I want to do a quick disclaimer. The information that we're providing is for informational purposes only. We are not intending to treat or diagnose any disease state. If you're interested in learning more about clinical trials in this session, do not hesitate to contact a study coordinator or your individual physician or call us here at the HCMA. You can find more information on this clinical trial at clinicaltrials.club or go directly to the sponsor's website, and that would be Lexicon. At the end of this session, you're going to be given an email survey through SurveyMonkey, which will allow you to participate in letting us know your inclusion criteria. There's just some questions that let you know whether or not you might be a candidate for the study, and you can then authorize the HCMA to send your contact information to a specific site to speak to a clinical site coordinator individually. We at the HCMA cannot answer the detailed questions about the clinical trial beyond what we're providing here today. If you have any other questions, just call the office and we'll be happy to assist you. I'm super excited to have two absolutely wonderful physicians and women in science, which we love that so much. Dr. Charlene Day and Dr. Carolyn Ho are going to talk to you about the study as they are the study investigators. So I like this team. Welcome, Charlene and Carolyn, and thank you for taking your time this evening to share this important clinical trial information with our participants. I believe we're going to be starting with Dr. Day.
Yes.
Okay. I hand it off to you, and I'm going to be controlling the slide, so just tell me when you're ready to go to the next.
Lisa, Julie, and Stacy, thank you all so much for putting this together, and thank you for all the attendees who are potentially interested in this clinical trial. So as Lisa said, I'm Charlene Day. I am a cardiologist and specialist in HCM at the University of Pennsylvania. And Carolyn and I are the co-chairs of the steering committee for the trial. So the name of the trial, actually just go back to the, sorry.
Oh, sorry, I hit it too fast.
The name of the trial is SONATA HCM. This is a phase 3 trial of the drug called sotagliflozin, which I'll tell you more about in a minute, in patients with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. Okay, now you can go to the next slide.
Thank you.
So sotagliflozin is a inhibitor of a transporter called sodium glucose cotransporter. And there are two isoforms of this, and you may have heard of these. There's a whole class of drugs called SGLT inhibitors. Other names you might have heard of are Jardiance, for example. They're drugs that were developed specifically to treat people with diabetes, because the way that they work in the kidney is to block a transporter that is responsible for resorbing glucose or sugar and sodium back into the bloodstream. So if you block it, then that means that glucose and sodium go out of the bloodstream and into the urine. And so it's a way of controlling high glucose levels in people with diabetes. The sodium, that is the SGLT2 isoform. There's another form of SGLT2, which is called SGLT1, which is present in the kidney, but also present in the intestines, and it's also present in the heart. And sotagliflozin, unlike other SGLT2 selective inhibitors, blocks both the isoform 1 and 2. So that's what the target of the drug is. Okay, you can go to the next slide. Oh, never mind. So there was more on the slide. I think I already said this, but the SGLT1 inhibition in the intestine delays absorption of glucose and reduces the rise in glucose after eating. And we already talked about what SGLT2 does. Okay. So sotagliflozin has been tested in people with diabetes and without diabetes, and in those with heart failure or kidney disease and cardiac risk factors in 2 different clinical trials. The first is the SOLOIST trial, and the second was called the SCORED trial. And the clinical trials were randomized placebo-controlled trials, tested in these patient populations that I'm showing here on the slide, with the primary endpoint being death, hospitalizations, or urgent visits for heart failure. So what you see here is that the curves between placebo and sotagliflozin diverge very early and continue to separate as the months go on. And so 18 months for one trial, 24 months for the other. Sotagliflozin reduced the risk of death, hospitalizations, or urgent visits for heart failure in both studies. I think there's another animation here. Maybe not. Oh, I might have taken it out. Sorry. So importantly, these trials did not enroll patients with HCM, and all of the trials that have tested sodium glucose transporter inhibitors in patients with heart failure excluded people with HCM. So that's why we were specifically interested in doing a trial targeting people with HCM. Okay, you can go to the next slide.
There you go.
Okay, so this was, to get a sense for whether the drug may be effective in people with HCM. What we did from the SCORED trial was we went back and looked at people who had reported that they had left ventricular hypertrophy, but did not have hypertension, with the idea that some of these people may have had hypertrophic cardiomyopathy and were not diagnosed, or maybe at least it was similar in some ways, and that there was hypertrophy of the ventricle that was unexplained. And we did what's called a post hoc analysis, which is where you don't specify in advance, but you look after the trial is done and make a comparison between people who are on sotagliflozin versus placebo. And what we found was that the reduction in events was very similar in this group as it was in the entire group. And so if some of these people had HCM, it looks like there was a signal potentially for efficacy of the drug to reduce the risk of death and hospitalizations for heart failure. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So, yeah. So this trial, unlike many trials that you may be familiar with in HCM, is going to enroll patients both with obstructive as well as non-obstructive HCM. Many of the trials have focused on one group or the other, particularly the cardiac myosin inhibitors. But because the mechanism of action of this drug is expected to be not targeting the gradient per se, but perhaps helping people with HCM sort of more broadly, then we think that there may be benefit regardless of whether there is obstruction present or not. And so that's the rationale for including patients over basically anybody with HCM, whether they have obstruction or not. You can go to the next slide. So this is what how we manage obstructive HCM in contemporary times, and many of you are familiar with the cardiac myosin inhibitors, which for people with refractory outflow tract obstruction who have been on beta blockers or calcium channel blockers or even disopyramide and continue to have symptoms and high gradients, they may be, there are people who would be considered for septal reduction therapy or cardiac myosin inhibitors. Okay, you can go to the next slide. However, there is a rationale for including these patients with obstructive HCM because we think there's room for improvement beyond just reducing the gradient. Sotagliflozin's potential benefit and mechanism of action would be independent of the gradient. And the other thing that we think that it could be doing is helping to improve relaxation properties, which is the strongest independent determinant of exercise capacity in patients with HCM, as opposed to obstruction or not. So the patients with obstructive HCM who we think likely would be eligible for the trial would be people who have gradients, who are on beta blockers or calcium blockers, and continue to have symptoms, but maybe not to the extent that they would meet criteria for or wish to pursue cardiac myosin inhibitors or septal reduction therapy. Or there are also patients who are on cardiac myosin inhibitors who have not achieved complete gradient reduction, but are still symptomatic and are not seeking septal reduction therapy. So this trial, importantly, will enroll patients who are on cardiac myosin inhibitors, regardless of whether or not they still have obstruction, as long as they're still symptomatic and not pursuing septal reduction therapy. Okay, you can go to the next slide.
Got it.
So for non-obstructive HCM, the algorithm for how we manage patients is that if patients have symptoms but do not have obstruction, we typically try beta blockers or calcium channel blockers with variable effects. For patients who are still symptomatic, we don't have a lot to offer beyond diuretics. And for those who have really significant symptoms, cardiac transplantation evaluation. And we know that this is a group of patients for whom we desperately need better treatment. So we're very hopeful that this could be a medication that could help people with non-obstructive HCM. So to summarize, the rationale for evaluating sotagliflozin in patients with HCM is that it's shown efficacy in patients with heart failure, both heart failure with reduced ejection fraction and preserved ejection fraction. These may not be terms that you're familiar with, but basically reduced ejection fraction is where the heart squeeze is impaired. But preserved ejection fraction obviously mean that the squeeze is normal, but somebody who would still exhibit heart failure symptoms. And we know this from the SCORED and SOLOIST trials that included both types of patients. I didn't show these data, but it looked like the magnitude of risk reduction in these trials in patients with higher ejection fraction was a little bit greater. So than in those with low ejection fraction, that would certainly favor most people with HCM and those that we'd be enrolling in the trial. And also possibly a similar benefit in the post hoc analysis of patients in SCORED who had hypertrophy without hypertension, some of whom may have had undiagnosed HCM. And I believe this is where Carolyn's going to take over. Is that correct?
I think so. All right. Great. Thank you so much. And thanks to HCMA and Lisa and Stacy and Julie. And thanks. It's like such a pleasure to be helping to run this trial with, my, best friend and best colleague in HCM, Dr. Day. And it's really exciting to be able to talk to you about it now. So thanks so much for taking some time out of your busy evenings and joining us with this. It's so exciting in general that there's so much interest in advancing the treatment of HCM. In the past couple of years, there's been such a flurry of activity that we've never seen before. We have new drugs available and in the testing, and all of that activity is fantastic. And we're, again, happy about everything, and really very interested in SONATA and thinking about what it's going to test and thinking about how it stands apart from some of the other trials that are ongoing in HCM. So first of all, it's going to be the largest trial conducted in patients with HCM, with 500 patients that we're hoping to enroll, 250 enrolled to the active arm, or randomized and blinded, we don't know, you don't know kind of fashion, to receive sotagliflozin, and 250 randomized to receive placebo. We're enrolling both obstructive and non-obstructive HCM patients. And as Dr. Day has pointed out, sotagliflozin has already been FDA approved and has been well vetted in people. It's not a new medication that is relatively early in its development and relatively early in use in humans. As Dr. Day said, the SGLT2 inhibitors were developed for diabetes, but in the diabetes trials, when they were first launching these drugs, they noticed that there were far fewer cardiac events in these people that usually have a lot of cardiac events. So they said, maybe this stuff is good for your heart. And they've tried it on different populations with heart failure. And these SGLT2 inhibitors have really transformed the treatment of patients with heart failure, because they were proven to be really safe and effective in terms of reducing symptoms, reducing hospitalizations, and reducing deaths from heart failure across the spectrum of ejection fraction, low or preserved. And so we're hopeful, for all the reasons that Dr. Day explained, that they will bring similar benefit to people specifically with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, not previously specifically tested in the prior trials of SGLT2 inhibitors. And so let's just go through some of these, what the trial actually looks like. So again, SONATA in the parlance of the clinical trial world is randomized, meaning that there's going to be, a computer flips a coin, and half the people will be allocated to receive the active medication, and half will be allocated to receive placebo, or a sugar pill. It's double blind, which means that neither you nor the study investigators will know which medication you were assigned to, the placebo or the sotagliflozin. And because we want this to be a fair test. If we don't blind it, a lot of times, we're all rooting for the sotagliflozin to win. So, if you knew you're on sotagliflozin, maybe you'll feel a little bit better, but if you knew you're on placebo, maybe you won't. And so we just need it to be a fair test. And so everybody needs to be blinded to what people are on. Placebo controlled, again, we need to have a comparison. And because we don't have right now, a standard of medications that people with HCM should be on, our comparator is placebo. And parallel group, meaning both groups are treated the same, and it's multi-center. So because it's such a large trial, we have to spread it out and just try to recruit broadly from many different sites around the world. And we're trying to evaluate whether sotagliflozin is effective and safe in people with symptomatic obstructive and non-obstructive hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. And so we're looking for adults over the age of 18 that, again, have hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. You can be obstructive or non-obstructive. The way we're defining obstruction is you have obstructive HCM if you have a gradient that's over 30 millimeters of mercury, however you get there, either at rest or with Valsalva. And then the non-obstructive group means that you don't have a gradient documented over 30 millimeters of mercury. We want you to have mild to moderate symptoms. So there's an instrument or a scoring system called the Kansas City Cardiomyopathy Questionnaire, or the KCCQ questionnaire, and there's a clinical summary score which kind of summates how you're feeling in general with symptoms caused by heart failure. And so the higher your score, the better. So we want to make sure that we have room for improvement, and we don't want to take people that feel perfectly well. We want people to have some degree of symptoms that we can try to improve. And so you have to have a score that's less than 85. And another way that we score symptoms is using the New York Heart Association class, or NYHA class. and want people to have class 2 or class 3 symptoms. Class 1 NYHA means you have no symptoms or no limitations. Class 2 means you have mild limitations with mild, or you have limitations with a moderate amount of activity, and class 3 means you are limited with activities of daily life. So again, we want people to have some symptoms, so we can show that we can improve symptoms. And then also a little bit different for SONATA is that your left ventricular ejection fraction, or your LVEF, can be all down to 50%. That's the threshold of where we would consider the ejection fraction to be okay. And HCM, if it's less than 50, we would be worried that your ejection fraction is reduced. The cardiac myosin inhibitor trials, because the cardiac myosin inhibitors will reduce your EF a little bit, just because that's the way they work. You have to have an ejection fraction of greater than 60 or 65% to qualify for those trials. But here, because sotagliflozin doesn't impact your EF, and it's actually good for people with low EF, you can have an ejection fraction down to 50%. Lower than that, your doctor might decide that they want you on sotagliflozin or something like sotagliflozin nonetheless. So that's why we don't include people that have lower ejection fractions. Okay, so if you meet the eligibility criteria, again, you would come into the clinical site that's running the trial. You'd have a screening visit, and then that would again confirm that you meet all of the criteria. That we have a couple 3 weeks to confirm that. And if everything looks good, then the computer flips the coin and you are randomized and assigned to either sotagliflozin or placebo. And then you enter into a 26-week period of treatment where, again, you're receiving your assigned study medication for all those weeks. And then there are going to be visits at week 2, which is a phone visit, week 4, week 12, week 20, and week 26. And then at week 26, your 7th visit, you would stop the study medication, and then everything would wash out of your system. And at 4 weeks after that, you would have a follow-up phone call. There's an opportunity to down titrate the sotagliflozin from the goal dose of 400 milligrams at week 4 if there are any difficulties with it. And again, because this is going to be such a large trial, we are engaging 130 sites in 20 countries across the world, and there are 30 sites in the United States, and we're hoping to get 125 participants from the United States.
Easy.
How many people do we have on the call?
Right now we got 76, and there's another 100 that have signed up that are going to get this after the event with the survey as well. So we can knock this out this week. We got this.
Okay. All right. There we go. All right. All right. So this is what you can anticipate will happen during the trial. So again, there are going to be 6 in-person visits, and includes the screening visits. And then you're going to have 2 phone calls over the 30-week period. So you're going to be treated with the medication for 26 weeks, then washed out, and then 4 weeks after you stop taking the medication, you'll have that follow-up last phone call. You'll have your usual history, meaning the study investigator and their team will ask you how you're doing, take a medical history, they'll do a physical exam, you'll get an EKG, you've had 1 million EKGs, they'll do an echo, you've had 1 million echoes. You'll have surveys about your symptoms and your limitations and your quality of life. That's going to be with that KCCQ questionnaire. You'll have a couple of blood draws. There's an opportunity to have genetic testing done. You can opt in or opt out. Some of you may have had genetic testing already done, and we can use those results if you give us permission to use those results, because we'd love to be able to explore whether sotagliflozin has a different impact and whether your HCM is caused by sarcomere genetic change or not. And also different from some of the other trials for HCM that are going on, there are no stress tests and there are no cardiac MRIs for this trial. So it's meant to try to be as user-friendly as possible and to try to limit the burden on the participants. You will be reimbursed to take part in the study, and that reimbursement is meant to cover some of the inconvenience and for your time and the cost of parking and that type of thing. It's yeah, um, it's just to really try to make it as easy as possible for you to participate. Nothing will be billed to your insurance. The study will pay for all the testing and for the medications. And so what we're trying to look for, how we're going to assess that efficacy, is in as and that's what's called the primary endpoint of the trial. That's what the trial is trying to prove, is that sotagliflozin can improve your KCCQ symptom score and make it so that people taking the sotagliflozin will have an increase or an improvement in their score relative to the people that were on the placebo. So we often talk about HCM trials being feel and function trials, because luckily most people with HCM don't have really kind of dreadful things happen to them over a short period of time. So we don't count the number of times people have to go into the hospital, or how many people die during the course of a trial. We really want to make sure that we're helping people feel better or function better. The function better is usually assessed by exercise testing, but here we're really focusing on the do you feel better, and we're assessing that by using the KCCQ questionnaire.
Next.
Okay, and then in terms of the safety profile of sotagliflozin, and again, sotagliflozin has been on the market for almost 2 years now, and has robust clinical trial data. So the type 1 diabetes studies enrolled over 4,000 patients across all treatment arms. Over 2,600 were treated with sotagliflozin, and in the type 2 diabetes studies that included patients with heart failure, over almost 18,000 patients were enrolled, and almost 10,000 were on sotagliflozin. So this has been a well tested medication, and it's generally very well tolerated. The side effects associated with all SGLT inhibitors, including sotagliflozin, are quite rare. And they include, and you'll this list will be familiar with you for those that watch TV and hear the commercials of Jardiance and all those other things, and the very fast speech with the commercials. There's a risk for a certain type of diabetic ketoacidosis, volume depletion or dehydration, genital fungal infections, because there's more sugar coming out in your urine. Sometimes that can put you at risk for developing those types of infections. Urinary tract infections in general, hypoglycemia, meaning low blood sugar, diarrhea, and acute kidney injury. But generally, people do very well on these medications, and most people don't notice too much difference.
Oh, okay. So this is my little thank you slide at the end here, just kind of acknowledging the whole team that brought this to you. So I'm going to stop my screen share right now. And I'm going to look to, we've got 10 questions waiting. And I haven't had a chance to peek at them because I was using my computer. I'm non-obstructed apical HCM with an aneurysm and past VT that resulted in cardiac arrest. I take Sotalol. Sotalol causes constant fatigue. Might this drug eliminate the need for Sotalol or an antiarrhythmic? I'll just generalize it to there.
Yeah.
Would I be eligible for the study?
Sure, I'll take the first one. So as long as the cardiac arrest was, I can't remember the exact time period, but I think it's like 3 to 6 months,
Yeah.
In the past, then that you would still be eligible to participate in the study. So as long as you met the other criteria, with an aneurysm, sometimes people can have a lower ejection fraction. So the ejection fraction would just have to be greater than 50, including the aneurysm in that calculation. Now, as far as whether it would eliminate the need for Sotalol, no, because Sotalol has a completely different mechanism. SGLT inhibitors do not have antiarrhythmic properties. So so we would not change the baseline, what we call sort of background or baseline therapy on any patients. You would continue on all the medications you're already taking, and this would be in addition to that, what the study drug is. Plus you may be on placebo anyway. So So typically in a trial like this, we don't change any of the medications you're already taking. Then you just add this to that. But it, just from what you said in that, in your question, it seems like you could be eligible for the trial. Yes.
Fantastic. What is the rationale for excluding those with ejection fractions under 50?
Carolyn, you want to take that? You
Yeah,
mentioned it
yeah,
already.
right. So because these SGLT2 inhibitors have been shown to be so beneficial for people with heart failure with reduced ejection fraction, if people with HCM are considered to have heart failure or have reduced ejection fraction when their ejection fraction is less than 50. And so in that situation, your doctor may think about putting you on an SGLT2 independently of this trial, just to try to take as good care of you as possible. And that's going to be more of a consideration the lower your ejection fraction is. And certainly, like if it's lower than 45%, most people would probably be thinking about potentially having you start on an SGLT2 inhibitor. Just to again try to take the best care of you possible, and so then it wouldn't be appropriate for you to be in a trial where you at the flip of a coin could or could not be on the SGLT2 inhibitor.
And and I might be incorrect here, but if your ejection fraction is under 50, there's a good chance you've already been evaluated or should be evaluated for transplant. And if we put a bunch of transplant potential people in a trial and FDA sees a lot of people going to transplant, that could make them confused as to what's going on.
I think it would be considered standard of care for people with HCM whose ejection fraction is less than 50 to be on an SGLT inhibitor at this point. So that's why we wouldn't do it. It's not a safety concern. It's just that patients with EF less than 50 should be on one already.
Fantastic. Thank you. Is there a crossover for those who get placebo? Will they ever receive drug?
Good question. So there is not a crossover design, and there is not a long-term extension for this trial because the drug is already FDA approved and available. Many of you if you're familiar with the cardiac myosin inhibitor trials, many of those had long-term extensions because the drugs were not available. And so that was the rationale for doing it. So we expect if we enroll at the pace we are anticipating that we would be done with the trial, perhaps in like 15 to 18 months, and that we would have an answer very soon about whether the drug was effective or not. And then if that's true, then Lexicon would be seeking a supplemental approval from the FDA to treat people with HCM with sotagliflozin, and then it would be, available. Anyway, and it's already commercially available. So it may just be that your physician, if you said you felt better during the trial and you wanted to try it before it was formally approved, it's possible that you'd be able to get it anyway.
Right. And this is, excuse me, a more standard medication where, the doctor just writes a prescription, you pick it up at your local pharmacy. You don't have to go through a big REMS program or anything like that.
Yeah. And there's
no specialty pharmacy.
No specialty pharmacy. You can get it at local pharmacy, and the echocardiogram, there's no requirement for your echocardiograms. We're doing one echo at 4 weeks for safety, just because, again, this drug hasn't been tested in people with HCM before, but we wouldn't anticipate that you would need to be doing serial echoes at any higher frequency than you would be doing them for your regular care.
Right. So just it's like a regular medication.
It's not that tricky. Okay. If you're a diabetic, can you participate in this trial? And if you're taking daily insulin, would that impact your insulin?
So we are an exclusion criteria are type 1 diabetics because of the risk for diabetic ketoacidosis, although lower. The absolute risk is low. It's still higher in people with type 1 diabetes. And so even though the drug has been used in type 1 diabetics very carefully in this study, we decided to exclude type 1. But you may be a type 2 diabetic and be taking insulin, in which case you could be in the trial. We would want to discuss, well, not we, but the investigators at the site would want to discuss with your endocrinologist, just in light of your other diabetes medications to make sure that it was well balanced and there weren't other adjustments needed.
Got it. Ajit, we answered the placebo question. There is no crossover, so I'm just going to mark that as answered. Where do you sign up? I can take this one, ladies. We're going to be offering you a survey opportunity. Right now, I think it's important to note that not all the clinical trial sites are up and running and contracted. So we have a couple of sites that are open now. There's going to be an opportunity for some other sites to come in later over the next couple of months. So you're going to get a survey from HCMA tomorrow, and you can fill out that survey, and it'll have the sites that are currently open. And if there's not a site that's convenient for you yet, there'll be an opportunity for you to check a box that says, I'm interested, but none of these are close enough to me for participation. Let me know when new sites open, and then we'll reach back out to you when those new sites are available. And our job is to, you give me authorization, you get HCMA authorization to send your survey responses to a clinical site coordinator. We're not doing all of the inclusion and exclusion criteria. We're doing the basic HCM inclusion criteria. So when you speak to the site coordinator, we're not talking about pregnancy and condom use and all of that stuff. We'll let the clinical site coordinator discuss that with you. We just don't want to get that personal with you. We're just going to assess your HCM eligibility. And just because you say yes to a lot of things on that survey, you could have another exclusion criteria that the site coordinator will discuss with you, and it might not be the right time for you for a trial based on that. So you'll be able to sign up through that survey. If you have any problems or any questions, you're always welcome to call the HCMA office, and we can walk you through the process as well. So we've been doing this type of trial recruitment since myocardia and the first trials in myosin inhibitors back in like 2014, 15, we started doing this. It's a really easy way for us to coordinate the patient with the site, and it's match made in heaven, and we get everybody enrolled. You said, you mentioned the current medication. I think we answered that question. Jeff, oh yeah, I have an ICD, so that is not a disqualifier. So
only a bi-particular ICD, which is unusual. So, but yeah, just a plain old ICD. Yeah, not an exclusion.
So in the survey, it's going to say, do you have an implantable device? Do you have a pacemaker, single lead device, double lead device, triple lead device, or a CRT device? Only the CRTs are excluded, correct?
Correct.
What if somebody's taking a GLP-1, Mounjaro, Ozempic?
That's fine. Yep, that's not an exclusion. And we just would want you to be on, a stable maintenance dose for at least a few months before you enrolled, because it could get confusing if you just start a new drug like that right at the same time as you start the trial and you lose a bunch of weight and you feel better. You're not going to know whether it's from the Mounjaro or from the study drug. So we would just want you to be on a stable dose and kind of a maintenance phase for a few months before you started.
Dave, this is a fantastic question. Is it possible to be in the study at the same time as another study?
No, unfortunately, you can only be on one study at a time that has an active intervention. You can be on potentially in observational studies where they're just getting blood or doing imaging, but like in terms of medical or other interventions trials, you can only be on one at a time.
So he happens to mention the Acacia study from Cytokinetics, and
any study.
Any study.
Any study, yeah. Any study where you're taking a pill.
If you're
having a procedure, yeah.
Completed a study and you're not in a long-term extension, you could enroll.
You can enroll. Hello, Anna. Long time no chat, young lady. I hope you're well out there in California. Does having an ICD affect enrollment? We just discussed that, so you're good to go with an ICD. Can you repeat what score qualifies for the trial based on one's ejection fraction? I'm non-obstructed. And what prescriptions somebody with AFib and heart failure might be affected by this drug used in the trial? So AFib, if you want to discuss the AFib criteria?
Yeah. Again, we're just, if you have new onset atrial fibrillation, or the rate isn't well controlled, or a procedure is anticipated like a cardioversion or an ablation, then that would not be a good time to enroll in the trial. But if you have stable, either paroxysmal or like intermittent or chronic atrial fibrillation, the rate is controlled and you're on kind of, maintenance therapy with no plan for an intervention, then it would be fine for you to be in the trial. As far as the ejection fraction question, I think it doesn't matter whether you're non-obstructive or obstructive, the ejection fraction of 50% is still the cutoff that we're using. If you're on a myosin inhibitor, the ejection fraction cutoff is 55%, because we want a little bit of a buffer, in case it fell and then you had to come off mavacamten and then, there'll just be a lot of movement. So that's why we have.
Okay, Anonymous, I hope we answered that one. What if somebody's on Farxiga or Jardiance or one of the SGLT2s? Can they qualify?
Well, you would have to discontinue it for, I can't remember, I think it's 12 weeks. And then you could enroll in the trial. If you're on Jardiance for diabetes, you may not want to be in the trial because you may want to continue on the Jardiance. But if somebody put you on it for your HCM specifically, and you would rather do a trial to see, to participate in the trial to see whether sotagliflozin again is a different SGLT inhibitor, you would be, we'd be happy to have you participate. You would just need to discontinue the Jardiance for a few months.
Okay, so we've got that one. And I don't know these, and I don't know that we can give you an exhaustive list right now, Maureen. What study sites are currently open? I'm sure you'll know a few of them, but the rest will be in the list that you'll get in the survey. So
yeah, I don't want to start naming them because I won't have a complete list in my head. So yeah,
okay.
It'd be better to be in the survey.
So Maureen, look for the survey tomorrow. There'll be a list. I believe there's 17 sites that are currently open. And as you saw in Carolyn's slide, there's going to be 30 sites in the United States. So we're about halfway there.
Yeah, we have them pretty well distributed across the country.
Yeah, so they should be within a convenient area to travel. If you're willing to travel, there's travel stipends available and they can help you pay for that if that is necessary. But if we know a site is likely to come on board closer to your area, we can hold off. They should be up in March and April if they're not open now. So we should have this done, in the first half of this year. I'm sorry, we couldn't be much more specific right now. How is this drug different than mavacamten or a myosin inhibitor? It's completely different. Who wants to take that one?
Yeah, sure.
Well, so mavacamten is a cardiac myosin inhibitor. It's a small molecule that binds to the heart's muscle motor, myosin, inside the muscle cells and decreases the rate at which it turns over ATP, which is energy. And the way that it works is to reduce the forcefulness of contraction of the heart. So it acts directly on the heart's molecular motor to affect contractility. Sodium glucose transporter inhibitors like sotagliflozin do not probably directly affect contractility, and we're not entirely sure how they work. I mean, we know how they work in the kidney, but the effect on the heart is so profound that seems like there must be a direct effect on the heart. I think the best guess based on the available evidence is that they seem to improve the way that the heart uses fuel. And so the metabolism of different fuels, fats, glucose, other things that the heart likes to use to make energy, it seems to enhance that. But it's still fairly preliminary in terms of the mechanism of action and whether it directly affects contractility. It doesn't seem to affect the ejection fraction per se. So it doesn't either decrease or increase the ejection fraction, but they really do act by completely different mechanisms.
The big question, does it have the potential to assist with weight loss as other drugs in this class do? This is where we're going to get a lot of people very interested. They're listening. Weight loss, yes?
No. Minimally, yeah, because really the other, because oftentimes SGLT2 inhibitors are spoken of, kind of in a similar conversation as GLP-1 receptor agonists. And it's the GLP-1 drugs like Ozempic, Mounjaro, Wegovy that really are the weight loss drugs. The SGLT2 inhibitors, have, pretty marginal impact on weight.
A few pounds, sort of 3 to 5 pounds on average.
Yeah. Okay. Take it.
Yeah, take what you can get. Yeah.
Take what you can get. I'm on Jardiance, which is mentioned to be a similar drug. Would I be able to participate? We've already discussed that. He's on Carrot. I don't have my glasses on and I'm not familiar with it.
I don't know what that is.
I don't know what that is either. Additional, I have microvascular disease and non-obstructive grade 2 diastolic dysfunction. Can those with microvascular disease participate?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I'm looking up Correndia. I don't know.
Finerenone. Okay. Yes, you can. That's fine.
Thank you for that quick Google search. I am currently taking Camzyos and am admitted into a trial. Could I stay on Camzyos in addition to the clinical trial med, or come off of it. So if
Would
you're
stay on it. Mhm.
yeah.
Wait,
Yep.
if you're taking Camzyos as part of a long-term extension, then you would not be able to enroll in Sonata. If you're taking Camzyos commercially, like you get prescriptions for it and you're with the REMS program, then that's fine.
So
Yeah,
the
we would not
long-term
take it.
extension study people, it's still a study, so you can't.
But most of those, I think, have converted over to clinical use. I'm not sure
Yeah, many are. Yeah.
any long-term extensioners left out there.
I think there's a handful of them left.
Yeah.
So if you're one of those, it's going to end soon and you're going to go on label.
Yeah.
So it may be worth filling out the survey, talking to a site coordinator, and figuring out where you sit on all of this.
Mhm.
The in-person visits would be at the site that you choose, which will be in the survey. So we answer that one. Did I miss any selection criteria based on age or physical activity level?
Just 18 or above and any physical activity level.
We are cruising through these questions. If you are blind trial for myosin inhibitor, no, we just discussed that. Thank you for doing your part for that trial, not this trial. When would you start the study? Oh, we got a few in here. So when would you start the study? Where are the in-person visit conducted? We're going to get that list to you tomorrow. Due to my work, I spend months away in September in Delaware, and then I'm out of state the rest of the year. Would this exclude me from a trial? You might have to travel back to your home region for a site visit. And if you needed to do that, there would be travel funding available in most cases.
Yeah, I mean, May through September would be most of your participation in the study. That's 5 months. You need an extra month. So you probably just need to travel for one visit if you enrolled in the month of May.
Perfect. Jardius EF 55 and just started Camzyos. Can I play in the study?
Again, the Jardiance you'd have to come off. Yeah. So if the Jardiance is not being used for a very specific reason for your healthcare, like diabetes, then you could talk to your doctor about maybe stopping the Jardiance, and after that's washed out of your system would have to check the protocol exactly for a few months, then you would be eligible to enter into Sonata.
We have a lot of people on Jardiance.
Yeah.
Another Jardiance question,
We
which
use
we've
it
answered.
empirically a lot, but we still don't know whether it works. So that's why we're doing this
Yeah.
trial.
We've already talked about when you're going to see the site list. So we've got that one. People who have been put on Camzyos on
Yep.
a label
Yep.
and you're still having symptoms,
Yep.
yes, you're in.
Yeah,
Regardless of
that's
whether
a key thing.
Yeah, right. And you can still have gradients or not have gradients. If you still have symptoms, you're eligible either way. Only if as long as you're not seeking septal reduction therapy. Like if you're so symptomatic that you're saying, I really need to have surgery, then that's not somebody we want to put in the trial.
One of our board members is asking a question. Rosemary's sister has non-obstructed HCM, but unable to attend the webinar. Can she be considered for the trial? Obstructed, non-obstructed. This one's a free for all, everybody.
Yeah.
We don't normally do that. This is exciting.
No requirement to be at the webinar to participate.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. Right. That's not an exclusion or exclusion criteria. Right?
And non-obstructed is
One
perfectly fine.
Single kidney.
Yes.
I think you can. I would want to double check with the sponsor, and that's something we could add to an amendment, which we're putting together next week. But actually, the SGLT inhibitors are protective for the kidney, so they're actually indicated for chronic kidney disease. I can't see that would be a problem as long as your kidney function was within the range, because there is a certain range.
Right.
If the kidney function is really low, then then that's an exclusion.
This is why we do the surveys the way that we do them. You're going to say, yeah, I'm interested. I need to learn more. So you're going to have a conversation with a clinical site coordinator to go over all of these questions as well. So if you're thinking that, yeah, this sounds like something that I might be interested in doing, just answer the survey, say I'm interested in a conversation. Answering yes on the survey does not oblige you to enroll in the study. It just says, I want to have a conversation to learn more. And if in doubt, talk to people, find out whether or not this is good for you. And sometimes the timing's not right for a trial. Sometimes it is. So if it is, you're helping us answer a bigger question for the larger community. So if you can give the time, we'd appreciate that. So with the study, sponsor, and that's how we learn. We all learn together. So one kidney's done. I'm going to study for an RCV vaccine. RCV vaccine, not a pill.
Try RSV, I think.
Probably RSV. Does that pull me out? So being in a vaccine study?
Probably not. I wouldn't think so.
Yeah, if you've already gotten the vaccine a little while ago, that's probably fine, I would say. Yeah.
We could run that one by the sponsor. I don't
Yeah.
see, that's certainly not an established exclusion criteria. So,
Okay, so answer the survey and talk to the site coordinator. I've been diagnosed with kidney disease. Would I be excluded?
only if the GFR, which is the glomerular filtration rate, is below 20. So that would be pretty advanced kidney disease. So if you have mild to moderate kidney disease, you would be eligible.
Okay.
Invokana is canical. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's yes. So same thing as Jardiance. You'd have to come off and then for a few months before enrolling.
It's an SGLT2, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
So you'd have to come off, clear it out, then potentially join. And so she asked the question twice. She really wanted to know an answer. If I've said this, I'm sorry, I missed it. What are the exact benefits of improvement which you see in the trial? Like, what are we hoping to see? Fit and function? You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So we're assessing feel, like how did the feel and function. We're really focusing in on helping, does this make people feel better? And so we're hoping that it will improve your Kansas City cardiomyopathy questionnaire score, which is a metric that looks at overall functioning and quality of life related to your health status. So we're hoping that the sotagliflozin will improve that metric of feeling better.
How many echoes are going to be required in this particular study?
3. There's one at screening, one at 4 weeks, and one at the end.
I know my HCM people love to look at those echoes and see their heart. So
if you are also on mavacamten, they don't cross over. So you still have to get all your MAVA echoes and the study echoes.
No getting out of those.
Dealt with that today. Yeah.
Any medical concerns about the trial drug which may cause dehydration in HCM patients?
This is a great question. And we spent a lot of time thinking about this, particularly for the obstructive patients. The diuretic effect of this drug is very modest and transient. So it generally goes away after a few weeks. And it's really more of a diuretic effect for people who have diabetes, whose blood sugar is not well controlled, because the glucose that you're excreting is part of what's bringing the water with it. So the reason that we're doing an echo at 4 weeks is for this purpose, is really and we're going to encourage people to make sure they're staying well hydrated, as we always do, people with HCM, but particularly during the trial.
Carry your water bottles. Maybe that'll be our next giveaway. Okay, that answered that. And I love this optimistic final question.
Yeah, we love that.
It's like, let's just get through this and get an approval from the FDA. So I will say that you have to get the trial populated. You've got to get the trial read out. Then you have to get that data and see if there's a signal there. And then they submit to the FDA for an extension of their label. So this process is a few years from start to finish, typically.
It may be faster because it would be a supplemental IND, because they already have an indication. So supplement generally goes faster than a primary indication.
And the faster we can populate the study and get all the people in and get the data, the faster we'll have an answer whether this is a good treatment option for those with HCM. Mm-hmm. So that completes our final question. And boy, did you guys do good on those questions. I will leave it open for another minute or two here as we kind of wrap things up tonight. So if you have any last minute questions, by all means, post it right now and we'll address it. I want to say thank you to Charlene and Carolyn for doing such great work of designing the study. We've been working very closely with Lexicon for several months now on evaluating all of the materials that are going out to the patients talking about potential sites, and really getting the information organized so that we could bring you this webinar as a starting point to help you understand why we want your participation in a clinical trial. Wendy, thanks so much for that. Appreciate that comment. Charlene, Carolyn, any final questions or comments that you'd like to make to our listeners?
No, we're just really grateful for all of the interest and for, how grateful we are for your willingness to participate in research to advance the care of patients with HCM around the world. So it really means a lot to us to see so many people here.
Yeah.
And we're very happy to take any questions that you have about the trial after this session. So you can feel free. I'm sure Lisa can give you our contact information, and you can reach out to us directly if you have other questions. We're happy to take them.
Absolutely. And the HCMA team is here Monday through Friday, 9 to 7 p.m. Eastern time to take your calls and answer your questions and make sure that you're comfortable with the next step in this process. So what's going to happen now is you're going to get an email tomorrow, and you're going to get a copy of the webinar so you can go back and listen to it again. I had a little problem streaming this one live while we were going, so it'll get put up on our YouTube channel shortly. We're moving to Vimeo in a few weeks too, so we're going to have another wave to share videos with you all. So you're going to see some differences coming up. So you'll get the link to this webinar. You'll get the survey. You can complete the survey. If you have any questions, call the team here. They're happy to help you. They can walk you through the whole survey. And then once you say yes, then our team will get back in touch with you and let you know that the information's been sent to the site. And if you don't hear back in a timely fashion from the site coordinator, then you call us back. We call them and say, hey, somebody's interested. Let's follow up on this, which really does also help not drop the ball if you're interested in a trial. So that's the way we do this.
Lisa, there is a message from Stacy that says Barbara has her hand raised. Not sure if she wants to use the Q&A. I can't chat with the guest.
Absolutely. So Barbara, if you want to use the little box on the bottom that says Q&A and post your question there, that will be how we can address your concerns. We'll give you a second to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, while we're waiting, again, I just also want to extend, our incredible gratitude and admiration for everybody, because progress is partnership, and we would not learn anything about this condition without, all of you being willing to partner with us to advance the field. And so partnership with HCMA and partnership with all the individuals. So thank you so much for joining us in this.
Excited. We've been working on this trial for 2 years, and it's a lot of just.
And it's just starting.
I know, and just conceiving of the idea, and then the funding has to come through, and and Lexicon got it funded. So, yeah, they're extremely excited about this and have
And if this isn't a good fit for you, there are so many other opportunities to participate in research, and we're just grateful for any participation that helps us move the ball forward.
We have so many opportunities to participate in research right now. We've got genetic trials, we've got drug trials, we have all kinds of assessments on imaging that are being evaluated and upgraded, and we're learning more every day. It has been a really exciting couple of years in HCM, and we're not done with all the cool stuff yet. So thank you all for participating. Barbara says she was just tech challenged. She didn't really have a question. So we didn't want to leave you out, Barbara. So thanks for posting that. Gretchen, thanks for the compliment. Glad to have you along with us. Always great to see you. So many new faces, so many old faces. It's great to see you all. We got a lot coming up in 2025 here at the HCMA. I hope you're all signed up for our webinar on Tuesday with Allegheny. If you're not signed up, get signed up for that. If you like this one, you're going to love the next one. And we have lots coming up in Heart Month and HCM Awareness Day. We've just decided that if you're living in the New Jersey area, we are going to have an open house here at our office. For those of you who don't know, HCMA recently expanded our office. So we have some new digs here that we can show off a little bit. And our staff has lovely places to work now with some elbow room. So that's great. And we're going to open up on the 26th in the afternoon. And if you're in the Jersey area, come on by. We're going to have a little open house, a little food, a little drink, a little fun, and show you a little bit about what we're doing. And if you are interested in helping with HCM Awareness Day, you can reach out to Julie Russo if you're interested in helping us get your state to sponsor HCM Awareness Day. Julie can tell you if it's already a thing in your state. Some states do it in perpetuity, some we got to go back to every year for this. So just an opportunity to pitch HCM Awareness Day, which is always the last Wednesday in February. So we look forward to seeing you all at our events on HCM Awareness Day and our webinar coming up next Tuesday, which Stacy will be taking the lead on that webinar for the first time because I got to be at another meeting and I found out that you can't be in two places at once. And yes, February 2nd will be my 8th heart transplant anniversary. So appreciation to my donor family, Brandy, my donor. It's a big time of year and I can't believe it's been 8 years already. So yay. Thanks for bringing that up, Gretchen. All right. Thank you all for joining us. Have a lovely night. This webinar is done. And thank you all. And they're all gone. Or they're going. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Great, great content.
Yeah. Yeah. Lots of questions. It was great.
Yeah, great questions too. Yeah. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, very good questions.
They're amazing people, you know?
Yeah.
They're great. Okay, I'm gonna
You can send the Delaware guy up my way. So
we can send Delaware guy right up to you, Penn. We got you.
Yeah, we're ready for him in May.
You're opening in May?
No, we're open already, but he's in Delaware in May.
Oh, he's Delaware in May. Okay.
Yeah, we're open. We've screened 2 already. We screened 1 today and then 1 previously who we have to rescreen for stupid reasons.
Got it. All right, ladies, I'll give it the rest of the night back. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Stacy, too. And where did
Thanks.
Okay.
Close it off now.
Yes.